Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Getting In a College Coach Conversation. This is the first show of February 2024. And for those of you who are maybe not financial aid fans, you might be unaware of the fact that February is Financial Aid Awareness Month. And so it's the first day of February, and we thought we'd kick it off by welcoming one of our college finance experts, Laurie Peltier, back to the show. Hey, Laurie.
Hi, Ian.
So we're going to be aware of financial aid today. And when we were talking about this in advance of the show, this is very much a back to basics kind of conversation. We want folks to just get the lay of the land. And we know that we have a lot of new listeners that'll come in. Maybe you've been recommended to listen to this from a friend. You might have a student who's a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and you're just starting to figure out some of the different components of applying to college. So this is a nice orientation to some of the basics that maybe you were too afraid to ask. So, Laurie, let's just start with what is financial aid?
Right. So, financial aid, or some people call it financial assistance, is a way for a student to receive funds to help reduce the cost of college. It comes in various forms, and every student gets something different depending on their situation.
Yeah.
But the major forms of financial aid are grants and scholarships, which are free money that doesn't have to be paid back. It doesn't have to be worked for. It's basically just a reduction of the cost because a
Hmm.
grant or a scholarship has been applied as a deduction to the cost of the college. And then there are loans. And so many times I hear from families, I applied for financial aid and I didn't get any. All I got was a loan. Well, the loans that we're talking about for financial aid are student loans, a loan in the student's name, and they can be interest free. So, an interest free student loan that you can't get anywhere else. You can't walk off the street into a bank and get this. So, you have to apply for financial aid to get this interest free student loan. Um, and it doesn't really change your overall cost of college. It changes when you pay for college.
Hmm.
So it would reduce your cost by having this student loan, but you would pay the loan back after the student graduates. The student would then be in a position, they've got their college degree, they're working, they can pay the loan back. So that's the second category. The third category is work study. Work study's
That's right.
different. It is a part-time job on campus, sometimes even off campus, where the students has the ability to have a job where they earn money to help pay for their expenses. There's a lot of incidental expenses when going to college, books and supplies and, computer equipment. And so the student may need funds that they wouldn't have, access to elsewhere. So working this work study job that's offered to them would give them the money in a paycheck that they can use to pay for those expenses that are part of the cost of college.
So you're drawing a real clarification here where some folks, when we talk about financial aid, they're just thinking about the first category, the free money that you get,
Hmm.
grants or scholarships, sort of no strings attached kinds of money. I mean, sometimes they
Hmm.
might be connected to maintaining a certain GPA.
Hmm.
But you're clarifying here that financial aid can also include favorable loans, student loans, and
Hmm.
then also this work study program where the student does have to work in order to
Hmm.
get those earnings, but that's a program that's provided for them.
Right, right.
Is there anything else for I mean, it seems to me that all of these forms of aid are coming through the institution. They're
Hmm.
being granted by the institution where you're applying. Except maybe scholarships. Is that right?
So the funds come from various resources.
Okay.
Um, grants grants can come from the federal government, like a federal Pell Grant. They can come from the state. A lot of states have a state grant for students who need money. So here in Massachusetts, where I am, we have a Massachusetts state grant that a student can get. And then it comes from the institution itself. So a college would know which students, based on their applications for financial aid, needed money to be able to afford them. And the college has money within their budget that they can offer. So when a student is evaluated for financial aid eligibility, the school is looking at all of these resources, federal, state, and institutional, to try to put together a financial aid package. The loans typically come from the federal government. There are some states that have loans as well, but the
Mhm.
loans that we were discussing were from the federal government. And then work study is a federal program as well, federally funded. So the federal government is a big piece of it. Our tax dollars go into those funds that then get handed out to the students who need it to be able to afford college.
Okay, that's helpful. Now, we want to talk a little bit about how families can actually acquire financial
Hmm.
aid.
Hmm.
Um, you apply to college for admission,
Hmm.
but there's also a process to apply for financial aid. Can you help just to describe what that looks like and what the general timeline is for a financial aid application?
Sure. Um, and I think it's a good distinction because some students get confused and think, I've done everything I need to do. I've done my application for admission.
Yeah,
I'm free and clear. And even on the application for admission, sometimes there are some references to financial aid, like, are you interested? Yes or no. And that
right.
might confuse a family to think, oh, then I'm done. If I check yes, then I'm done. But no, the school will need a lot of data to try to figure out what you qualify for based on your financial need. So they will capture this data on the financial aid applications. The primary one is called the FAFSA form, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. In a typical year, it comes out October 1st. This year, it didn't come out until almost January 1st, and it's
Right.
still kind of in the testing phase a little bit. There are still some glitches with it. But for those of you with younger children, it would be October 1st of senior year is when you fill it out. You'd be reporting the parents' income and assets and family size and, just answer all the questions. It is similar to the admission process in some ways where you can list up to 20 colleges on this form and it would automatically be sent to those 20 colleges all at once. So you just do one application and send it. So most students are filling it out October, November, maybe December, depending on how they're applying for admission. Um, some colleges, about 200 colleges across the country, have added a second form where they capture more information, and that's called the CSS profile form. Um, so just as it is in admission, in the financial aid process, every school can set their own deadlines. They can set their own requirements. So just because you've done it right for one school doesn't mean you've done it right for all the schools on your list. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of homework there to figure out what's needed and what's required. But what they're doing with these applications is really just evaluating where is this family financially compared to the price of this school. Do they have the resources to fund this education or do they need help? And can we offer them help?
And the calculations that financial aid offices are doing when they're looking at
Hmm.
every family's individual circumstances, whether
Hmm.
that's only through the FAFSA or through both the FAFSA and the profile, they're coming up typically with a number in terms of what they expect a family can afford. What
Right.
is the output of that calculation?
That's a good question. So on the FAFSA form, the output is called your Student Aid Index, or
Hmm.
SAI. It's basically a gauge of where your family is compared to being able to afford the school so that a college financial aid office can evaluate all the applicants and see which ones need the money the most and where their money's going to go. So they changed it to an index because they want it to be I don't know really how to explain that, but a gauge of not, they're not thinking this family can reach into their pocket and pull out $3,000 tomorrow. They're
Sure.
just saying, in the grand scheme of things, your index is 3,000, and the family next to you might be 5,000, and the one down the street might be 20,000. So it's different for every family.
So they're trying to paint with some broad brushstrokes in
Hmm.
terms of these different areas to help get close to a solid estimate of what a family might need in
Hmm.
order to afford a particular school.
Correct.
A fair way
Correct.
of saying it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good summary.
So, with respect to kinds of aid, this application process, I think, can
Mhm.
sometimes feel arduous, but is important for a lot of families to go through. Do you have to apply always for every kind of financial aid you might get? Or are there some forms of financial aid that you just receive when you apply to a school, even if you haven't completed a FAFSA or a profile?
Right. So there are scholarships that are based on academic merit or how desirable the student is for a school.
Mhm.
And oftentimes a school will offer that just based off of the admission application and not looking at any financial data. So I don't really include academic or merit-based scholarships as part of financial aid.
Mm.
It's not really financial assistance because you need it. It's a recruitment tool to get you to go to that school. So, and to confuse it even more is some colleges will call their grants, their need-based free money
Yeah.
scholarships.
Which they're
So,
not. They're
right,
grants that families
right,
qualify for based on
right,
their income. Right.
right, right. So that's where the definition between need-based aid, financial aid offered to the family because they financially need help,
Hmm.
versus merit-based aid that's based on the student's standing or desirability.
And I remember a discussion that we had internally here in College Coach, and I want to say it was 5, 6 years ago, but we really wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about our college finance experts as financial aid experts,
Hmm.
because that's just one pool of funding that families might have access
Right,
to when they
right.
apply. There are a lot of other different spaces, but when we talk about financial aid, we're
Hmm.
really thinking about those three buckets that you established
Right.
at the start of the
Correct.
segment.
Correct.
Now, some folks that we'll talk to might say, look, I'm not super confident with our income level that we're going to qualify for any kind of financial aid. It
Hmm.
always strikes me that people speak with some degree of certainty there,
Hmm.
even if they haven't gone through any kinds of calculations, they make
Hmm.
assumptions. What would you say to folks who are thinking about, well, maybe I should apply for aid or maybe I shouldn't? It seems like a headache. Is it really
Hmm.
worth it to me?
So every family's different, but most of the time applying is going to be the right way to go so that you can have access to student loans if you need them. You'll have an application on file in case things change in the future. Some schools have access to specific scholarships if you just apply for financial aid. So, it's a case by case basis, but I do think it's something that a family should evaluate as they go through the admission process of, are we going to apply? Yes or no? Why might we? Why might we not? And there are calculators, like you said, that can help a family predict whether they do qualify based on income. And oftentimes it can depend on the schools that they're applying to.
Gotcha.
There are colleges who specifically say if you want access to our merit scholarships, you need to complete the financial aid application.
That makes sense.
Um, so oftentimes families will do it at least freshman year, and then if they realize that it's not going to be worthwhile for them, they skip it the future years. But if they are receiving aid, you do have to apply every year.
Okay, that's a very important
Hmm.
clarification as well. Now I'm going
Hmm.
to finish this segment with a selfish question. My daughter's a fifth grader. She's heading into sixth grade next year. That's the start of middle school, and that means college is not too far away. For those of us who have younger students, how can we start getting acquainted with financial aid and trying to understand what we might have access to vis-a-vis, our family circumstances? Now? Should I just wait and ask that question later, or is there something that I can start to do in terms of homework?
That's a good question. I think it's too early unless you really think that your family financial situation is going to stay status quo for the next 6 years.
Hmm.
Um, but there are calculators on each college's website. So if you knew Stanford was in your wheelhouse, that's where you wanted your daughter to go, you could go to Stanford's website and do their net price calculator. There are also ones that mimic the FAFSA form and would tell you your student aid index on the federal government website,
Okay.
studentaid.gov. So you could do that. Other than that, I would say just keep saving.
Keep saving. All right. And
Yes.
I think we'll probably have a segment on saving
Mhm.
perhaps later this month,
Mhm.
or certainly later this year. We always come
Mhm.
back to that
Mhm.
conversation, and it's a very important piece of this
Mhm.
for those of you who are parents of younger students.
Mhm.
Laurie, is there anything that we missed on this intro to financial aid today?
I don't think so, but I wanted to just plug that we will be talking about it all through February for Financial Aid Awareness Month.
That's right. So subscribe to the podcast, tell a friend. It's helpful to get this information out within your communities so that folks aren't leaving money on the table or other sources of support. So, Laurie, this is a great kickoff to Financial Aid Awareness Month. We really appreciate it. And folks, we're going to take a break and we'll come back to talk about engineering students. So don't go away.